Thank you so much for staying with us. You heard him there, the Mayor of Kano and the former central bank governor and executive of one of Nigeria's banks, cautioning the current government about its policies. Well, another former central bank governor is speaking again. Well, if these guys are talking in this manner, there is something that we need to look at urgently. Charles Soludo is also vocal on similar matter. So after this, I'll allow my guests to come in. Let's take a listen to Charles Soludo on this matter.
Development. We must begin to think about how we break out these dynasties of poverty through qualitative but accessible education and health. If the poor doesn't have that, if it doesn't have the skills, and therefore to have the capacity to be able to participate in the production process, it will not be able to share in the result of the output. APC needs to come clean with Nigerians. That's my fundamental thesis here. They need to realize that the old Nigeria of rents is no longer. And then, very importantly, explain to Nigerians the agenda, the steps that it hopes to take to go from here to there.
There you hear. He's also spoken about the government listening now. Joining me to give some perspectives to this issue is the Executive Director of the Center for Social Justice, a legal practitioner and a democracy development expert, Mr. Eze Onyekpere, joins us from our Abuja studio. Many thanks for joining us on the program. Let's quickly dive into the matter now. You've heard him there. Those former Apex Bank governors have spoken about the policies of President Muhammadu Buhari, saying that the APC government must listen, and they also say they must come clean. But let me quickly put this to you. Does it look like about 2 years into this government, the life of this government, do they look like a government that listens?
Well, the question of listening is a bit relative. You listen and people will like to see the result of such a listening process. So I think the fundamental challenge is the lack of clear direction, a policy path that people can see that the challenges the economy faces, these are the ways and means that the government has planned to come out of the challenge and to reposition the economy in such a way that it begins to become more productive, deliver more services, and get people out of poverty. But what we are seeing is like something that is not just transparent enough in terms of nothing clear that people can hold on to. It's still a question of trial and error. So once those policies are placed on the table and people can debate them, then Nigerians can begin to have faith in the process. I think a couple of days ago there were stories in the media about an economic stabilization bill and a request for emergency powers to deal with the situation we have on hand. And my immediate take to that is that it's not a question of being granted extraordinary powers. What we have in Nigeria today, the crisis we are into, is because we refuse to obey the laws. We refuse to follow the rules. So instead of a deviation from the norm, we need more of an evidence-based and rules-based process for taking decisions which everybody can understand and be part of. And then they will, as every Nigerian, be able to help the government to achieve the obvious goals of poverty eradication and creating more wealth for all to share.
One of the concerns of the Mayor of Kano is the policy of the government of the day, in the sense about talking about the issues of the valuation of the Nigerian currency, the Naira. It said that it looks so much that when they've cried about the valuation of Naira and some of these FX policies, it looks so much like now the president is taking his stand, but it's affecting the poor more than the rich. The poor seems to be carrying the suffering and the burden for the rich, and the rich is earning more money. He's talked about staying in his garden and making more money from FX. But when we look at it now, the president has insisted that the Naira may not be devalued in anytime soon. But is that a right way to go considering the state of the economy?
Well, the Naira has already been devalued. I don't know what, if anybody should insist it hasn't. I mean, you know what the prices of goods and services are today in the market. We also know the fact that we started the year with about, is it 199 or 200 to the dollar? And today we are talking in excess of about 325 officially. And even in the black market on the streets, is going for in excess of 400 naira. It's normally the issue that when things like this happen, that those who are rich and who have access to the foreign exchange and the corridors of power will naturally get richer. But it is the duty of government to try and step in and seek the ways it will use to alleviate the sufferings of the people. And in that way, you can begin to talk about investments in the critical sectors, those sectors that can touch the people's lives more. You talk about power, you talk about education, you talk about works, you talk about housing. So we are expecting that government should bring out the policies to re-engineer the economy in such a way that we can have more of the retention capacity for the economy. In terms of, even if we are spending capital money, capital expenditure from the budget, more of the money will be retained locally instead of it going outside the country. More jobs will be created. And then those infrastructure that support production, that support industries, more of it will come on board so that investors don't have to start leaving Nigeria, as we are hearing, going over to neighboring countries. And then that confidence will be back into the economy. And I think it is something that is doable if the right political will is there.
Again, Mr. Onyekere, one will wonder, for example, some of the research that your center, Social Justice, working on, but again, it brings to the mind some of the recent visits that we've seen to the presidential villa, the seat of government, where we've seen past head of state from Abdulsalami Abubakar, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, to General Gowon, Professor Soyinka, Pastor Tunde Bakari, Alaafin Ofoyo, some other traditional rulers have visited the president. I'm very sure they perhaps are talking about the state of the Nigerian economy. And when we hear the Emir of Kano says, look, the government must listen, what does it bring to your mind, that word, the government listening?
Well, it somehow suggests that the government is not listening to suggestions that have been made there. But then this suggestion may not be in the public domain. We haven't heard exactly what the government was told and what it has refused to do. But I think we need more of vibrant minds, fresh ideas that will turn around the economy, rather than the old solutions coming from exactly the same old brigade. I mean, you're talking about former presidents who have been the people who turn things around the national ground. So we need more vibrancy. We need more new ideas. Some of the things that they've been suggesting about, fast-tracking the procurement process, selling of public assets, all those things are already old ideas that have been there in the public domain. We need something that is fresh. Even if you are talking about selling of assets, you need to identify them. For instance, when the Americans faced their own economic crisis way back in 2008, 2009, they had a very detailed piece of legislation which came from the executive and went to Congress. So detailed, it ran into over 660-something clauses. These are the kind of things in every sector. Let us come forward with specific ideas of what needs to be done. The National Assembly will debate it, Nigerians will debate it and fine-tune it, and together we implement it. So it's not just a question of saying whether the government is listening or not, but let's hear the suggestions that have been made to the government so that we know whether they are the type of suggestions the government should listen to or the type it shouldn't listen to. But on top of it all, we need vibrancy. We need an economic team that can bring those vibrant ideas. Currently, I don't see that team. And until we see that team, get more people into the team who have experience, then we'll still be running from pillar to post.
All right, let's take a moment now, and afterwards we'll be talking about what Nigerians feel about the policies of President Muhammadu Buhari, and we give perspectives to some other issues and concerns of some other elder statesmen. That is going to be right after now. Stay with us.